السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال ومن ادعى عبدا وعلى نخلها ثمر أخذها الشفيع بثمرها، ومعناه إذا ذكر الثمر في البيع لأنه لا يدخل من غير ذكر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we're busy doing the chapter in this fasal, which has to do with either an addition or an addition has occurred to the property or the plot that was sold, or a deficiency. So a naqs has appeared in the property or in the plot that was sold. So each of that can be of two types. The addition could either be man-made, for example, the Shafi, as we did yesterday, the Mushtari, as we did yesterday, or the Shafi, he put them an extension, he planted some crops and so on and so forth, where there were previously none. So it can be man-made. Or it can be due to a natural process. And same thing with the naqs, with the deficiency. The deficiency could either be a natural disaster caused the deficiency. For example, building caught fire, burned to the ground, crops dried, whatever the case was. And so as a result, part of the property was damaged. But not because of any man-made issue, but because of a natural disaster. So that was discussed yesterday. And the second was itlaf, and that because of the disaster came about, or the naqs, the deficiency came about, it was man-made. And so the mushtari or the shafi threw down a building. In order to make alterations, he threw down a building, he cut the trees down, whatever the case might be. Okay? So those three, number 1, number 3, and number 4 was discussed yesterday, the two types of deficiencies and the one type of addition. Now, he's going to discuss the second type of addition, which happens through a natural process. It wasn't man-made, but the property grew, or some addition came onto the property through a natural process, not because anybody added anything, not because anything was built onto it, nothing. Understood?
Yeah.
You follow? Right. Now, first of all, he says, وَمَنِ ابْتَاعَ عَرْضًا Imam Qudi rahmatullahi, وَمَنِ ابْتَاعَ عَرْضًا عَلَى نَخْلِهَا ثَمَرٌ أَخَذَ الشَّفِي بِثَمَرِهَا. That whoever purchases or sells the property on an orchard, basically, and on the date trees, for example, date trees, is some fruits of dates. The Shafi will take that property, that orchard, including the dates on the tree. ومعناه إذا ذكر الثمر في المبيع or إذا ذكر الثمر في المبيع. The meaning of this ibarat is that if the dates were specifically mentioned in the contract, because as was mentioned yesterday, something which is muttasil to the land according to the Ahnaf, you don't have to mention it, you don't have to give it an added mention. When selling the property, it will automatically be included. But the fruit is not automatically included. Why? Because the fruit can be separated. It's not something that has to necessarily be attached to the property. In fact, it is going to come a time when it has to be cut in any case. It has to be harvested and separated. So the fruit is not something that is automatically included in the transaction, but it has to be specified that this is the price inclusive of the fruits. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. لأنه لا يدخل من غير ذكر, because the fruits, whatever it might be, dates, whatever it might be, right, is not included in the transaction automatically without mentioning it specifically, without explicitly mentioning it. وهذا الذي ذكره استحسان.
Mark, I just say, is it just that fruits for that grow in that time, or every time it grows?
Mark, I understand?
I said, is it just that fruits of that harvest at the time that it's
Yes,
there?
just that harvest at that time, correct. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Because the trees are going to stay. The trees are going to stay. So the next harvest, which it will be fully grown by the new owner. So it will be cultivated and looked after and whatever. Then all the money and expenditure that goes into growing the next harvest will be the new owners. So then in
Okay.
that case, he'll be entitled to the harvest, to the next year's harvest, or the next season's harvest.
Okay.
وهذا الذي ذكره استحسان. And this which he mentioned is istihsan. Istihsan, I told you, is a type of qiyas khafi in the Hanafi madhab. Then أخذ الأخذ الترك القياس الجلي. And ترك القياس الجلي وأخذ بالقياس الخفي. So that's istihsan. What's an example of that? Just to make you understand. So an example of that is what? An example is if any najasat falls into a stagnant water, right? A little stagnant water. What is the masala?
Let
A
them
drop
stay
of
in water.
urine, even, or a drop of blood, or a drop of alcohol into water. See?
If it's mal kathir, then it will be clean. It will still be.
If it is what?
If it's mal kathir,
No, I'm saying a little stagnant water.
a little stagnant, then it will be napa.
The whole thing, right? Even though it's one
Sure.
drop, right?
Sure.
All right. So that is the masala. It doesn't matter as long as it's not 10 by 10 and so forth. Even one drop of najasa is sufficient to render the entire water najis. Yes?
Sure.
Right. So that's the masala. That's the masala. So what if I ask you, what happens if some number two, the droppings of an animal falls into, for example, a donkey or a horse or a camel falls into a well? What's the masala?
That is to remove the water that was in there.
Ma?
To remove that water that was in there at that time.
No, you don't have to remove the water. It's not. It doesn't become najis. Let's check up again. If a little bit of number two droppings of an animal that is ma'akul or markuk, like check in Nur al-Ilah, it won't become najis because of dhurura. Because it is inevitable, especially in a village, that that's going to happen. Because wherever there's water, especially wells, there's going to be animals. And wherever animals, there's going to be droppings, and there's no way to prevent that from happening. You follow? So if every time you're going to find a dropping, you have to remove all the water. When you're ever going to get water? You follow?
Yeah.
So but qiyas is what you said, isn't it? Qiyas is what you said. Am I right? That is the
Yeah.
obvious, that's qiyasul jelly. That's the obvious reason. This masala of the well supposed to fall under the normal pattern. But if any najasa falls into a little stagnant water, it becomes najis. Okay?
Sure.
Yes? The following?
What you want?
You don't seem so sure, Jay.
No, no, I was just writing it. That
Yeah, we must
thing
check
about
Nur
it.
al-Idah. So, Ma'ul Aba, is it? Babul Aba. So, why? The reason for that is because the Sahaba ijma, they had ijma on this. So the qiyas is it's supposed to be najis. But the Sahaba in their times by ijma said it's not. So this is istihsan. So because istihsan in this case, because ijma of Sahaba, it will be stronger than qiyas. is a stronger the dalil, that ijma' the Sahaba is a stronger dalil than the qiyas that we make. You follow? So this is istihsan, where you give preference to a stronger dalil over what is supposed to have been the masala. It's important to understand, because some people think istihsan is, oh, the Hanamis sucking things out of their thumbs. Hanamis feel that in this masala, they think that in this masala, this should be the case. If they couldn't find an answer, so they changed them. No, we didn't change the masala. We found another stronger dalil that is excluding this particular masala or this particular scenario from the normal pattern. Okay, so it's very important. So you can see the diqqatun nazar, and the very, very fine and understanding, and a very, very wide nazar, very wide foresight that the Ahnaf, especially Fuqaha, had, and over the Quran, Sunnah, and so forth. Okay, so anyway, so that is istihsan. So what he has mentioned is istihsan. Well, qiyas la ya'khudhu. However, the qiyas should have been what? That he is not allowed to take it. لأنه ليس بالتابعين, because it is not a secondary. It doesn't follow. It is secondary to the. It's not secondary to the plot, to the land. So you shouldn't have been allowed to take it. ألا يرى أنه لا يدخل في البيع من غير ذكر. Don't you see it's not included in the transaction without it specifically being mentioned? فأشبه المتاع في الدار. So it resembles the furniture, for example, in the house. وجه الاستحسان. But what is the reason for the istihsan? إنه باعتبار الاتصال صار تبعا. We say that, keeping into consideration that it is connected to something that is connected to the tree, which is permanently connected to the property, صار تبعا للإيقاع. Therefore, it becomes secondary to the land. كالبناء في الدار, just like how the buildings are on a plot, or the buildings are in a complex. وما كان مركبا فيه فيأخذه الشفيع. So whatever is made up of those two things, the shafi will take it as well. Okay, you understood that?
Great.
And so this is like almost like an introduction to the masala, which is coming to. So if there are fruits there, he's allowed to take the fruit as well. Right. But now the question is, what if this fruit came about afterwards? There's growth, but it came afterwards. It wasn't there at the time of the sale. So, but by the time the Shafi was able to get it after the judicial process in it, then the fruit came on. Is he still entitled to it or not? Because now there's been growth. Since there's been growth, there should be the value of the property should have increased. So is he still entitled to take it or not? Gee.
وجه الاستحسان أنه باعتبار الاتصال
No, finish that. Yeah.
فقال وكذلك إن ابتاعه وليس في النقيض ثمر قائم أثمر في يد المشتري، يعني يأخذه الشفيع لأنه مبيع تبعا، لأن البيع سرى إليه على ما عرف في ولد المبيع.
And like that, meaning the masla is the same. And the masla is the same. Here, qala is actually the musannif, Marghinani, rahimullah. In ibta'a, if he purchases it, وَلَيْسَ فِي النَّخِيلِ ثَمَرٌ, at the time that it was sold, there was no fruits on the date trees. For example, it can be any tree. There was no dates on the fruit on the date tree, on the palms. فَأَثْمَرَ فِي يَدِ الْمُشْتَرِي, and then when the mushtari had it in his possession, prior to the Shafi taking it, the dates came on. And then it grew dates. In other words, يعني أن يأخذ الشافعي, the Shafi in this instance also will be allowed to take it, even though the addition came afterwards. You follow?
Yeah.
So if it was a man-made addition, that was the first masla, the other masla is different. If it is a natural growth, the Shafi can take for no extra cost. لأنه بيع إنه مبيع طبعا. Why? Because this is part of the مبيع. This is part of, is included is included automatically in the مبيع. لأن البيع سرى إليه على ما عرف في ولد المبيع. Why? Because the transaction has automatically seeped into it, or has been extended to it, and has been extended to it as is known with regards to where the mabi, obviously has to be a slave girl, gives birth. So at the time that the ba'i sold the slave girl, she was not given birth. But by the time the mushtari took the child, took the slave girl into his possession, she had given birth. Is the child included in the transaction or not? Understand? So the masala is that the child is included. Why? Because the child follows the mother. The child is a tabi of the mother. So when the mother was sold, she was sold as is with whatever comes with her, including the child. Okay? Even though the child hadn't been born as yet. So the same thing here.
قال فإن جده المشتري ثم جاء الشفيع لا يأخذ الثمرة في الفصلين جميعا لأنه لم يبقى تبعا للعقار وقت الأخذ حيث صار مفصولا عنه فلا يأخذه.
She قال فإن جذه المشتري. جذ means قطع, but is normally used for any type of tree. Okay? To cut the fruit of any type of the jadda. And the word jadda, with the dao is coming in front, is specifically used for a date palm tree. So jadda, any tree, any fruit bearing tree, and jadda specifically dates. It's qata. So if he harvested, if the mushtari cut the fruits of the tree, ثم جاء الشفيع, thereafter the shafi came, لا يأخذ الثمر. You will not be allowed to take the thamar as part of the transaction. في الفصلين جميعا, in both masaya. In both masalas. Okay? Both masalas meaning what? That there was dates on the tree at the time, or the dates grew afterwards, after the mushtari bought it. Okay? In both cases, if by the time the shafi came along, the mushtari had already harvested the fruit, it will not be included in the sale. Why is that?
Is it a benefit from it already? It
Marv?
was part of it because he was the owner of it at that time.
No. Remember I told you yesterday, the shufa is only in immovable property.
Immovable.
Yeah, so when the dates are cut, it's no longer immovable, it's movable property. It's no longer part of the immovable property. It's now become movable property. There's no shufa in that. Okay?
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. It's going to come in front, inshallah. لأنه لم يبقى طبقا إلى العقار, because now it no longer remains a tabi secondary to the plot. وقت الأخذ, at the time of taking possession. حيث صار مفصولا. Why? Because it's become separated from it. فلا يأخذه, so therefore you will be not allowed to take part. And by becoming separated, it's no longer immovable but manqul. So it's movable property now, and there's no shufa in something which can be moved and carried around, transported. قال في الكتاب أي في الكدوري فإن جده المشتري, and if the mushtari was to cut, meaning the dates, سقط عن الشفيع حصته, then that amount will fall off from the shafi. That percentage will fall off from the price for the shafi. Okay. قال رضي عنه هذا جواب الفصل الأول. This is the response to the first masala. And this is the response to the first masala. لأنه دخل في البيع مقصودا. Why? Because it has entered into the transaction principally. Okay? Principally as a Intentionally. So it is part of the intent. Right? This is where he bought land and there was already dates on there. The first masla. That's what you find the fossil or the first masla, where the person bought the mushtari when he bought the plot, there was already dates on there. And then he went and cut it. So according to Imam Qudur rahmatullahi, that percentage of the price will be reduced. Okay? Why? Because for inna ul dakhala fi bay, because there when he bought the property inclusive of the dates. Now there's a price of whatever price he paid. Let's say he paid 2 million, then that would have included the dates on the tree. Okay, so that was included. So the 2 million was what? Was for the buildings, for the land, for the trees, for the fruit. You follow?
Yeah.
It was part of the price. That's what it means. داخل في البيع مقصودا. Okay. فيقابل شيء من الثمن. So therefore, some part of the price will be equated to it. So now, when you cut it off, that then will be cut from the price when the Shafi takes it as well. Because in that instance, they bought the property, and the price was inclusive of the dates, the fruit on the tree. أما في الفصل الثاني, however, in the second مسألة يأخذ ما سوى الثمر بجميع الثمن. He will be allowed to take everything besides the fruit for the full price, for the full amount. So this is when the dates grew afterwards through natural process. Why? لأن الثمر لم يكن موجودا in العقد, because the fruit was not present at the time of the transaction, so therefore it was not included in the price. Understand? So when it grew now afterwards, added value to the property. You follow? And when the mushtari cut it, he cut he cut something that was not part of the property in the first place. فلا يكون مبيعا إلا تبعا. So therefore, it cannot be part of the thing that was sold, the house, the property that was sold, except as a tabi. فلا يقابل شيء من الثمن. So therefore, no portion of the purchase price will be equated to it. Wallahu alam al-atla knows best. Understood?
Yeah.
Any questions? So they completed. And the next fossil is what I hinted to twice or so. In what things is shufa allowed? So basically, like I told you, it's only allowed in immovable property. It's not allowed in movable objects. So, but there's obviously more masail connected to that. Inshallah, that's what we'll discuss. Inshallah, next week, that's what Allah allows. This is the second last chapter. We've got one more chapter after that, and then inshallah, this Kitab al-Shufa will be being completed bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. See, mashallah, the night of Jummah, increase our salawat. Surah Al-Kahf, dua for yourself, your parents, your family, your communities, or all Muslim Ummah as well, inshallah. See, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.